Julia Turner stood in the bathroom, staring at the little white stick in her hand, the two pink lines glaring back at her like an accusation. "Oh no, oh no, oh no," she whispered to herself, her mind racing. She felt the walls of her world closing in, and the realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She was pregnant. But that was just the beginning of her nightmare. Who was the father? The question echoed in her mind, spinning her thoughts into a chaotic whirlpool. She gripped the sink tighter, trying to steady herself. Just weeks before, she had been in a comfortable marriage, but everything had unraveled so quickly. Now her heart raced not only from fear, but also from the weight of her secrets. Julia had always been the type of woman who thrived on stability. At 32, she was a successful project manager at a prominent advertising agency in New York City. She had a nice apartment, a steady income, and a seemingly perfect life with her husband, Mark. They had been together for over 5 years, and she thought they were on the same path to starting a family. But as the months passed and their plans kept getting delayed, she found herself feeling more isolated and unfulfilled. That's when she met Andrew. Andrew was everything Mark wasn't. Spontaneous, adventurous, and charming in a way that made Julia's heart race. They had been working late nights together on a project, and the chemistry was undeniable. One night, after a few drinks at a bar to celebrate their campaign's success, they ended up in a hotel room. It felt so thrilling, so liberating. Julia had convinced herself it was just a one-time thing, a fling that would help her escape the growing monotony of her marriage. But it didn't stop there. Shortly after, she met David at a networking event. He was a musician, a free spirit who filled her head with dreams of a life less ordinary. Their connection was electric, and before she knew it, she found herself swept away in another moment of passion. She had lost track of her heart amid the excitement, and now she was stuck, wondering which man had left this unexpected mark on her life. In the days that followed her discovery, Julia felt the weight of her secret pressing down on her chest like a heavy stone. She had to figure out what to do next. How would she tell Mark? What if he found out the truth? The fear of losing him and the life they had built together was paralyzing. Yet the fear of facing him while carrying someone else's child was even more terrifying. Every morning she would wake up and catch Mark's eye over breakfast, forcing a smile while her heart raced with anxiety. He was oblivious, and she hated herself for it. He was still the loving husband who brought her coffee in bed and left sweet notes in her purse. Yet she felt like a stranger in her own life, haunted by guilt and fear. Julia knew she had to make a decision. Should she confess everything to Mark? Should she try to figure out who the father was first? The thought of confronting her betrayal terrified her. On a particularly stormy evening, she found herself curled up on the couch, staring blankly at the TV, when her phone buzzed. It was Andrew. "Hey, I've been thinking about you. We should meet up." Her heart raced as she stared at the message. Did she want to see him again? Could she bear to face him after everything that had happened? But the curiosity and longing she felt were overpowering. After a moment of hesitation, she replied, "Okay. When?" Meeting Andrew felt both exhilarating and terrifying. They agreed to meet at a quiet cafe in the East Village, the same spot where they had shared their first stolen kiss. As she walked in, the familiar scent of coffee mingled with the sounds of laughter and conversation, making her feel oddly nostalgic. When she saw Andrew, sitting at a corner table, a rush of emotions washed over her. He looked up, his blue eyes sparkling with that same mischievous charm that had drawn her to him before. They exchanged awkward pleasantries, and the weight of unspoken words hung heavily between them. After a few minutes of small talk, Julia could no longer contain herself. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm pregnant." Andrew's expression changed in an instant. The playfulness faded, replaced by concern. "Wow, Julia. Are you sure?" She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, but here's the thing. I don't know who the father is." The silence that followed was deafening. Andrew looked at her, processing her words. What do you mean? I was with you, and then I was with David. I just, I don't know how this happened. I'm scared. Andrew reached across the table and took her hand. You shouldn't have to go through this alone. What do you want to do? That was the question that had haunted her since she found out. I don't know. I love Mark, but I don't know if I can be honest with him now. I'm lost. Andrew's expression softened, and for a moment, she felt the familiar pull of their connection. But she also felt a pang of guilt. I can't keep running away from this. I have to figure out what I want. As they parted, Julia's heart was heavy. She returned home, feeling more confused than ever. Her encounter with Andrew had stirred up old feelings, but she couldn't ignore the reality of her situation. The following week was a whirlwind of emotions. Julia avoided David's calls, unsure of how to face him. She had to confront her feelings about her marriage and the two men who had unexpectedly entered her life. After several sleepless nights, she finally decided to take a pregnancy test to confirm what she already suspected. As she waited for the results, she thought about Mark. He deserved to know the truth, but how could she break his heart? When the test confirmed her pregnancy once again, panic surged through her. She needed to make a decision, and fast. The clock was ticking, and she felt the pressure of time closing in on her. That weekend, she finally confronted Mark. They were sitting on the couch, the evening light casting a warm glow around them, making everything feel so deceptively normal. "Mark, can we talk?" Julia said, her voice trembling. "Of course. What's up?" He looked up from his phone, concern etched on his face. "I have something important to tell you," she started, her heart racing. She took a deep breath, her mind racing with thoughts. "I'm pregnant." His expression shifted, confusion clouding his features. "What? Are you serious?" She nodded, feeling tears welling up. "Yes, and I need you to know that I don't know who the father is." The silence that followed was deafening. Mark's face paled, and Julia could see the betrayal wash over him. "What do you mean you don't know?" His voice was a mixture of shock and hurt. I made mistakes, Mark. I thought I was looking for something I felt was missing in our marriage." His expression hardened. "So you cheated on me?" "Yes, I never meant for this to happen, but it did." Her voice broke as she spoke, the weight of her guilt suffocating her. Mark stood up, pacing the room as anger and confusion battled within him. "I can't believe this. I thought we were happy. How could you do this to me?" "I don't expect you to understand, but please let me explain," she pleaded, desperate to salvage their relationship. "Explain what? That you threw everything we built away? That you slept with other men?" His voice rose, filled with hurt. Tears streamed down Julia's face as she watched the man she loved fall apart. "I'm so sorry. I thought I could handle it. I thought I was just trying to find happiness, but now I'm lost." Mark's expression softened for a moment, but the pain lingered in his eyes. "I don't know if I can get past this, Julia. You've shattered my trust." The weight of her actions hit her like a tidal wave. "I understand if you need time. I'm here, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Mark shook his head, the hurt still evident. "I need to think. I just don't know if I can look at you the same way again." As he walked out of the room, Julia felt a part of herself break. The life she had built was slipping away, and now she was left to confront the reality of her choices. In the days that followed, Julia felt more alone than ever. Mark's absence echoed through their apartment, amplifying her guilt and confusion. She tried to reach out to Andrew and David, but found herself pushing them away, fearing the weight of her choices. Then, one evening, she received a message from David. "Can we talk? I've been thinking about you." She hesitated, but felt a flicker of hope. Maybe David could provide the clarity she desperately needed. They agreed to meet at a nearby park, a place that felt less intimate than their usual haunts. As she walked through the park, her heart raced with anticipation. When she saw David, he was sitting on a bench, strumming his guitar absent-mindedly. He looked up as she approached, a warm smile breaking across his face. "Hey, I've missed you," he said softly. "I've missed you too," she replied, taking a seat next to him. After exchanging pleasantries, Julia felt the urge to confide in him. "I need to tell you something important." "Okay," David set his guitar aside, his expression shifting to one of concern. "I'm pregnant," she blurted out, her heart pounding. His eyes widened, shock crossing his features. "Wow. Do you know who the father is?" She looked down, feeling ashamed. "I don't. That's the thing. I was with you and with Andrew." The air felt heavy with unspoken words. "What are you going to do?" he finally asked. Julia felt lost, her mind racing. "I don't know. I'm scared, and I don't want to hurt anyone else." "Have you thought about keeping the baby?" His question surprised her. "I want to, but how can I raise a child without knowing who the father is? How would I explain this to my husband?" David's gaze softened. "You're not alone in this. You have options." "Options? Like what?" "You could consider raising the child together. I'd be there for you, and we could figure this out as a team." Julia felt a mix of hope and anxiety. The idea of having support was comforting, but the thought of raising a child with someone who wasn't Mark filled her with dread. After her conversation with David, Julia felt a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. She had always envisioned starting a family with Mark, but now she was faced with an impossible choice: pursue a life with David, who represented the excitement and passion she craved, or fight for her marriage and the stability she had known with Mark. In the days that followed, she wrestled with her feelings, caught in a web of uncertainty. She still hadn't heard from Mark, and the silence only amplified her guilt. She decided to reach out to him, hoping to find a way to rebuild their connection. "Mark, can we talk? I really need to see you." To her relief, he agreed to meet that weekend at their favorite coffee shop. When they sat down, the air was thick with tension. Julia could see the hurt in his eyes, but there was also a flicker of hope. "I'm sorry for everything, Mark," she started, her voice trembling. "I can't change what happened, but I want to work on us." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Julia. You hurt me deeply. Trust is hard to rebuild." "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes. I love you, and I want to make this work." Mark looked at her, his expression softening slightly. "I just need time to think." "Take all the time you need. I'm here for you." As they parted, Julia felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. Weeks passed, and Julia's pregnancy progressed. She started to feel the baby's movements, a gentle reminder of the life growing inside her. It made her heart swell with love, but it also served as a constant reminder of her choices. One evening, as she sat on her couch with her laptop, she stumbled across articles about motherhood, pregnancy, and relationships. She realized she had to make a decision. She couldn't keep living in this limbo. After much contemplation, Julia decided to reach out to Andrew again. "Can we meet? I need to talk to you about something important." When they met, Julia took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. I'm pregnant, and I don't know how this happened." Andrew looked taken aback. "Wow, what do you want to do?" "I'm not sure, but I need to know if you're willing to be part of this child's life." His eyes softened, and he nodded slowly. "I want to be there for you, Julia. This is a big deal, and I'm ready to support you." Julia felt a rush of relief wash over her. For the first time, she felt less alone. But the reality of her situation was still overwhelming. She still had to tell Mark everything. When Julia finally confessed to Mark about the pregnancy and Andrew's willingness to be involved, she braced herself for the fallout. They met at the same coffee shop where they had first tried to reconnect. "Mark, I have something to tell you," she said, her heart racing. He looked at her warily. "What is it?" "I've spoken to Andrew. He wants to be part of the baby's life, and I thought you should know." Mark's expression darkened. "So you're going to have this child with him?" "I don't know. I just wanted you to understand that I'm not trying to shut you out of this. I want to figure it out together." He shook his head, a mixture of pain and anger etched on his face. You've already made your choices, Julia. How can I trust you after everything? I know I messed up, but I love you. I want to make this work, but I can't do it alone. Mark's expression softened for a moment, but he still looked lost. I just don't know if I can forgive you. Tears streamed down Julia's face as she felt the weight of their situation. I'm willing to fight for us, Mark. I'm here, no matter what. As the months passed, Julia's life transformed in unexpected ways. With the support of Andrew and the remnants of her connection with Mark, she navigated the complexities of pregnancy. She learned to embrace her journey, focusing on the life growing inside her. Mark still struggled with his feelings, but began attending counseling to work through his emotions. Julia appreciated his willingness to confront their issues, even as they both grappled with the uncertainty of their future. Eventually, Julia gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, and in that moment, everything shifted. Holding her daughter in her arms, she felt a rush of love that transcended all her fears and regrets. The path ahead was still unclear, but Julia knew she had a choice. She could either allow her past to define her or embrace the present and forge a new future for herself and her daughter. With each passing day, she chose to love fiercely and honestly, committed to being the mother her child deserved. Months later, Julia sat on a park bench, watching her daughter play in the sun. Andrew was by her side, and even though they weren't romantically involved, their connection had deepened through the shared experience of parenthood. Mark was still in her life too, as they both worked toward rebuilding their friendship. It wasn't easy, but they were trying. Julia took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. Life had thrown her a curveball, but in embracing her truth and making difficult choices, she had found strength she never knew she possessed. As she watched her daughter laugh and play, she smiled, knowing that no matter where the road led her, she was ready to face it head-on, one day at a time.